My dear children of class 12, in my last video of Lost Spring, the part 4 video, we have learnt about Sahib's condition, a rag picker who did not wear shoes in his life, and this was due to the perpetual state of poverty, and tradition also compelled them to remain shoeless. Then the narrator came across a man from Udupi who once told her that as a young boy he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest, and he would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. And 30 years later I visited his town and the temple, which was now drowned in an air of desolation. So the authoress Anis Chung said that a man from Udupi once told her that as a young boy he would go to school past an old temple, and his father was a priest, and he would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. The father was so poverty stricken that he could not afford to buy him a shoe. And 30 years later, the narrator visited that particular place, town and the temple, which was now drowned in an air of desolation. That was completely turned into futility. And so the narrator drew a comparison. In the backyard where lived the new priest, there were red and white plastic chairs. A young boy dressed in a grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, arrived panting and threw his school bag on a folding bed. So looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer another boy had made to the goddess when he had finally got a pair of shoes. So let me never lose them. The goddess had granted his prayer. Young boys, like the son of the priest, now wore shoes, but many others, like the rag pickers in my neighborhood, remained shoeless. So the authoress Anis Chung drew a comparison between the son of the priest condition 30 years ago and 30 years later. Their condition improved. Their standard of living improved, and the priest's son go to school and they wear shoes, and they have plastic chairs in their home also. So naturally there lies the comparison between 30 years ago, the condition of the priest, and 30 years later, the condition of the priest's son. Okay. Now, there are 10,000 other shoeless rag pickers like Sahib, and they live in Simapuri, on the outer edge of Delhi, in structures of mud with roofs of tin and tarpaulin, but devoid of sewage, drainage or running water. So it's written in the text that my acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers leads me to Simapuri, a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it, metaphorically. So this line is very important for the short answer type question. And a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it, metaphorically, what does it indicate? So what is the metaphorical meaning of it? That Simapuri is a place on the periphery of Delhi. That means it's very near to Delhi, but miles away from it. Because Delhi is a very developed, sophisticated, posh place, and Simapuri is just on the outer edge of Delhi, very near to Delhi, but exactly contrast to Delhi. Because Delhiites are affluent, they are rich, they are sophisticated, but Simapurians are all very poverty stricken, and they live in slums with or without roofs on their head. They are deprived of sewage system, proper sanitation or running water, and they are just squatters who came from Bangladesh back in 1971. Now they have lived in Simapuri for more than 30 years without identity cards or permit. They have right to vote. With ration cards, they get greens. So food is more important for survival than identity. Wherever they find food, they pitch their tents, and that become their transit homes. Children grow up in them and become partners in survival. In Simapuri, survival means rag picking. Now, through the years, rag picking has acquired the proportions of a fine art. That means it's a matter of wonder. What is fine art? Which soothes your mind, which refreshes your mind. And this has acquired the proportions of a fine art. That means they enjoy rag picking because the children don't understand the gravity of the situation. They roam here and there, and their innocence is there not to understand their poverty-stricken condition, and it seems to be a fine art to them. Now, garbage to them is gold. It is their daily bread and roof over their heads. And there lies another question here, that what is the symbolic meaning of gold? The symbolic meaning of gold is, I mentioned earlier also, to earn money, that means to find out money or better livelihood. That is gold. And garbage to them is gold. It indicates that they scrounge garbage dumps, and whatever they gold, they just give it to the elders, and that means their parents, and they buy food with that money. It is their daily bread and a roof over their heads. Now, sometimes Sahib finds a rupee or even a 10 rupee note in the garbage heap. And then there is hope of finding more, and it has become an addiction. What has become an addiction? That means scrounging garbage dumps. So garbage has a meaning different from what it means to their parents. For children, it is wrapped in wonder. For the elders, it is a means of survival. So another very important question lies here, that what is the difference in the reaction of the children and of the elders when they scrounge garbage dumps? Now, one winter morning, the author finds Sahib standing by the fenced gate of a neighborhood club, and he is watching two young men playing tennis. They are dressed in white. Sahib likes the game, but he is content. He is very much satisfied to watch it standing behind the fence. Sahib is wearing discarded tennis shoes that look strange over his discolored shirt and shorts. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true. But tennis is out of his reach. Tennis is a game of a sophisticated class, of a rich class. And this tennis game is beyond the reach of this poverty-stricken child, Sahib. But he is intently watching the game and he is enjoying it. Once again, this reveals his innocence. He doesn't understand the gravity of this poverty-stricken condition. What is their future? But being a child, he is very happy to watch that game. This morning, Sahib is on his way to the milk booth. In his hand is a steel canister. He works in a tea stall. He is paid 800 rupees and all his meals. Sahib is no longer his master. His face has lost the carefree look, and he doesn't seem happy walking at the tea stall. So, he is totally under bondage. He has lost his freedom and liberty. He is unable to work with his rag pickers friends, and he is under someone else. That means there is authority who will dictate him. So he doesn't like that particular job, and he left that job. Now children, in my next video, you will come to know about Mukesh, who wants to drive a car.